I thought paying for the house would finally earn me a place in this family. Instead, I lay paralyzed on the floor while my mother shouted, "We're not your damn servants." The first sensation that returned was the sting of blood trickling down my cheek, warm and sticky. My left leg wouldn't respond. My right arm trembled but barely moved. I could hear voices, the static buzz of the television still playing in the background, the low hum of the fridge, and then my mother's voice sharp as ever. "I'm not touching him," Linda snapped as if I were a dead rat in the garage. "Let him figure it out. He's so independent, remember?" That same cold, familiar tone. It wasn't the first time she made me feel disposable. But this time it came with blood on my face and a fracture in my spine. I couldn't see them clearly, just shadows moving near the edge of the hallway. My vision blurred in and out, and all I could do was listen. "I told you," Monica said, not bothering to lower her voice. "He's going to drag this out forever. If we want control of anything, we need to act now." They were standing feet away, their voices hard and flat, like they were talking about a broken appliance, not their own son or brother lying helpless on the hardwood floor. "Can we activate the power of attorney?" Monica asked, like it was an order, not a question. "He signed it last year, after that appendix thing, didn't he?" Linda hesitated. "I think so. I'll have to dig up the documents." That moment should have chilled me, but all I could feel was shame and a dull building rage. This was my house. I bought it. I paid for every inch of it with my own damn hands. And I had let them move in, Linda after her third divorce. Monica because her lease ended and she couldn't be bothered to find another place. Even Brady, our baby brother, moved in after failing out of community college. I thought it'd be temporary. I thought helping family would mean something. It didn't. "Should we call someone?" Brady's voice barely audible, like a kid asking permission. "No need," Linda said. "He'll come to eventually. Just bruised pride." A beat later, I heard the front door creak open. A woman's voice called uncertainly, "Hello, is everyone okay?" I heard a noise. It was the neighbor, Mrs. Romero. Her voice cut through the indifference like sunlight through fog. "Oh my God," she gasped, rushing over. "Daniel, can you hear me? What happened?" I couldn't speak. My jaw tensed, but my throat refused to form words. I blinked slowly once, twice. She turned back to the others. "Why didn't you call 911? Linda's reply came too fast. "We were about to." Really, Mrs. Romero didn't buy it. "He's bleeding." I tripped. I whispered finally, voice hoarse. Slipped floor was wet. No one responded. Monica moved toward the couch, phone in hand. I saw her typing quickly. Maybe texting, maybe not. Brady just looked down at the floor. Guilt or apathy, I couldn't tell which. Minutes later, the paramedics arrived. They took control immediately, strapping me to a gurney, checking vitals, calling ahead to the ER. As they wheeled me out, I turned my head just enough to see Linda standing with her arms crossed, watching without emotion. Monica was behind her, smirking slightly. "At least now we can finally sort out the deed without him interfering." Her words pierced me deeper than the pain in my spine, not even whispered. Just casually tossed like a grocery list item. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand and throw them both out of the house I had bought. But I couldn't even lift a hand. The ER was cold. The fluorescent lights made everything feel more surreal. Doctors asked questions. Nurses took vitals. A scan confirmed a spinal contusion, temporary paralysis, they hoped. I nodded through it all, pretending to be present, pretending this was still my life. But everything had already shifted. Hours passed. I lay alone in the hospital room of 4, dripping into my arm, the sterile smell clinging to everything. A nurse had left my phone on the bedside table. I reached for it, slowly wincing. I opened my banking app, mostly out of habit. At first, the screen wouldn't load. Then it did. The joint account linked to the household bills was empty. Lying in the hospital bed, I opened my banking app and saw the joint account now empty. They said I gave them too much power. Funny they were the ones who made me sign everything while I was still groggy from surgery. The painkillers had turned time into fog. One moment I was being wheeled through a hallway. The next, I was waking up to Linda standing over me with a clipboard and a pen talking fast about just insurance waivers and necessary forms for rehab. I remembered flashes, nurses changing my IV, the beep of a monitor, my mother's voice as constant as the machines. Just sign here, sweetheart. They won't release you otherwise. I remembered Linda waving papers in my face while nurses changed my IV. Now, a week later, I sat propped up in the rehab facility's small recovery room. The mattress was too firm, the walls too beige, and the silence between physical therapy sessions made every minute stretch unbearably long. The pain in my back radiated down to my legs, sharp and inconsistent like lightning that refused to strike the same place twice. The nurse said I was healing. I didn't feel like it. Linda visited almost daily, always bearing that plastic smile and thin voice. "How are we doing today, Daniel?" Like I was a patient in her clinic, not her son recovering from a spinal injury. She brought more forms clipped neatly to folders highlighting where to sign with neon pink stickers. "This is for billing," she said on Wednesday, not even meeting my eyes. "Just formalities. You know how slow insurance gets." I wanted to ask more, but my tongue was thick from medication. I remembered signing something but couldn't remember what. My signature was barely legible, a shaky scrawl I wouldn't recognize now. Meanwhile, Monica had taken over my house like it was a project on HGTV. She posted on Instagram, finally upgrading this outdated kitchen. The backsplash I had personally installed 2 years ago was already gone. A neighbor messaged me asking if I'd moved out for good. When I asked what made them think that, they sent me a photo Monica out front with a welcome sign and her yoga group doing stretches on the lawn. Brady came by one afternoon, awkward as ever, with a grocery bag full of snacks I didn't ask for. "Mom says you gave her full authority now," he mumbled while unzipping the bag. "What?" she said. "You made her power of attorney again. You signed it, remember?" My jaw clenched. "I signed insurance stuff. Not that." He shrugged. "She says it's all official now." I pressed the call button the minute he left and asked the nurse for my phone. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "I need to call my lawyer." His name was Randall. I'd known him for years. He'd helped with the mortgage, the trust fund I'd started, even the original power of attorney form I'd signed during a medical scare a year ago. It was supposed to be temporary, conditional, revocable. But when I dialed his number, I got voicemail. Then again. Then a message saying the number was disconnected. I stared at the screen, bile rising. The next morning, I tucked my phone beneath a thin blanket and began recording everything. Every word Linda said when she visited. Every conversation with Monica over speakerphone. I stopped taking medication until after they left. It made the pain worse, but my head clearer. Friday came. Monica stopped by just to drop off some mail, though. Her bag bulged suspiciously with design samples and swatches. "Thought you'd want to see how we're updating your place," she chirped, tossing a few papers on my tray. I waited until she left before examining them. Beneath a flyer for a flooring company was a half-folded document. My eyes scanned it slowly. Top margin, California uniform. Statutory form, power of attorney. The bottom corner, my name. My signature. My date. The exact same date I remembered Linda shoving papers in my face after surgery. I grabbed my phone and began taking photos of every page. Then I opened my email, not knowing exactly what I was looking for. Maybe a notice, a scan, some warning sign I missed. What I found instead stopped me cold. There was a sent email from my address to an unfamiliar legal firm with the subject signed POA plus deed transfer documents. Attached a file with my name on it. I searched my email for anything legal and found a sent file I never remembered attaching. The house I paid for now had floral wallpaper and lavender curtains, and not one decision had my name on it. The car ride from the rehab center felt longer than it should have. The van arranged by Linda smelled faintly of antiseptic and lemon-scented wipes. I sat in the back, quiet, my hands clasped tightly in my lap as we passed familiar streets that suddenly looked foreign. I should have been grateful to come home, but home had become a concept that didn't apply to me anymore. The deeper I looked, the more I realized I had become a guest in my own life. Monica was waiting on the porch, all smiles, as if I were an old tenant she pitied. Her hair was perfectly curled, nails done in a soft pink shade that matched the welcome mat she must have picked out. I noticed it right away. It had a scripted M on it. "Let me grab the ramp," she said, already moving toward the garage. "Brady forgot to put it back last night." The metal ramp clanged as she dragged it across the driveway. Linda stood at the door, arms folded. "Try not to scratch the new tiles," she muttered as I was wheeled over the threshold. I stopped just inside the entryway and blinked. The space had changed drastically. My framed jazz records were gone, replaced by generic beach art. The taupe walls had been painted over with soft lavender, and the curtains, they matched. The bookshelf had been rearranged. Or rather, repurposed now, holding yoga blocks, scented candles, and what looked like essential oils. My chest tightened. "You'll be in the guest room," Linda said, taking my bag before I could protest. "You'll want some privacy, and Monica needs the master for work-from-home calls. Work from this is my house." I said, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. She smiled without warmth. "You let us stay here. Don't make things difficult now that you're back." The guest room was barely wide enough for my wheelchair to turn. The bed sat low, and the only personal item in it was a framed quote that read, "Gratitude is the attitude." I stared at it for a long time. Later that afternoon, Monica knocked once before walking in. She handed me a cold bottle of green juice I didn't ask for. "So I'm planning a little get-together next week," she said cheerfully. "My birthday. Nothing crazy, just a few friends. Some wine, maybe a karaoke setup in the backyard. Shouldn't bother you." "My birthday's next week too," I said quietly. She blinked. "Oh, right. Forgot we're close together. Well, we can celebrate both if you're up for it." She meant if I stayed in the back room and kept quiet. That night, I rolled into the kitchen for some water. The house was dim quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge. Brady was at the counter with a spoon and a jar of peanut butter. He jumped when he saw me. "Didn't hear you come in," he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "It's fine," I said. "Couldn't sleep." He shifted on his feet. You should talk to Greg." I looked at him. Greg, Monica's old business partner. He told Mom once that this kind of stuff taking over a house like this might not be totally legal. I frowned. When did he say that? Dunno. Like a year ago. They stopped talking after that. Greg? I hadn't thought about him in years. He and Monica started a fitness app together back in 2020. It failed like most of Monica's ventures, but they were close once. Close enough for me to remember him showing up to family barbecues, arms full of tech gear, and too much energy. I rolled back to my room and searched for him online. A few clicks later, I found an old LinkedIn profile, outdated but still active. Then I found something else. A court record. Greg Hadley versus Monica Reyes. Filed 2021. Dismissed 2022. The reason: insufficient evidence of financial misconduct. I read it twice, then again. It was a short judgment, barely 3 pages, but the keywords told a story. Commingled funds, verbal agreements, lack of documentation. It wasn't just a falling out, they'd gone to court. And she'd won. I looked up Greg and found out he had sued Monica 2 years ago. And lost. Greg didn't pick up when I called. He showed up at my door. I wasn't expecting him. Certainly not that early in the morning, not before I'd even had my coffee, or figured out how to get down the damn ramp without help. But there he was, standing on the driveway in a black hoodie and mirrored sunglasses, holding a manila envelope like it was evidence from a crime scene. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He nodded once and waited. He wasn't there to reminisce. He was ready to fight. I wheeled myself out slowly, careful not to draw attention from the living room windows. Linda was usually up by now, sipping her morning tea with the curtains wide open, judging the neighborhood like it owed her something. Sure enough, I saw the flick of her blinds just as I reached the driveway. "Inside your house," Greg said dryly. "Or mine, I'd rather not have her eavesdropping," I muttered, tilting my head toward the curtain that had just twitched. "Let's talk out here." He handed me the envelope. "Recognize anything?" I opened it and pulled out a handful of papers, contracts, digital forms, emails, even a scanned PDF with Monica's name, in bold and mine listed below as a minor silent investor. I didn't remember signing any of it. "These are from when you backed her fitness startup," Greg said. "She used templates like this to shuffle ownership percentages around. Look at the signature line." I scanned the last page. The signature was mine, or at least it looked enough like mine to pass casual inspection. The date, however, was wrong. It was dated 6 weeks after I'd pulled funding. "She's always had a flair for paperwork," he added. "The kind that looks legal until you read the fine print." "She used this format on me," I murmured, flipping through. "For the power of attorney, maybe." Greg's lips curled. Exactly what I thought. He crouched beside me, lowering his voice. "Listen. I spent a year trying to prove she doctored our contracts. She was smart, kept communication, verbal, deleted emails, ghosted everyone after the lawsuit. But I held on to something." He pulled out his phone and tapped a folder. "I recorded some of our strategy meetings. One night she got wine drunk and said something enlightening." He hit play. Monica's voice crackled from the speaker. "If Dan's dumb enough to bankroll me, he's dumb enough to bleed dry. I mean, come on. He signed over his house to Mom. What does that tell you?" The clip ended. Silence fell between us. I looked up at Greg. His expression was unreadable, but his knuckles had gone white around the phone. "You helped fund her once," he said. "Let me help dismantle what's left." "Why?" I asked, genuinely unsure. "She humiliated me," he said simply. "Took my name, my time, my money. She took your life. That's worth fighting for." Before I could respond, the front door creaked open. Linda's voice sliced through the morning calm. "Gregory," she called, her tone tight. "You're stirring up ghosts again, aren't you?" Greg didn't turn. He just said, "Better ghosts than snakes," and walked a few steps down the driveway. She crossed her arms, peering down at me. "You really think bringing back old messes will help you walk again?" I rolled past her without replying. Back in the guest room, I couldn't stop replaying the clip in my head. The smugness in Monica's voice, the certainty, the way she knew exactly how to twist the blade. Greg texted later that evening with a name, Sasha Mendez, digital forensic expert. "Knows her stuff. No paper trail. We'll reach out soon." I stared at the name. I didn't know Sasha, but if Greg vouched for her, that was enough for now. I had to build something quietly, surgically, without tipping my hand. I opened my laptop and created a new encrypted folder, Phase 1 Retrieval. And that's when it hit me. I hadn't realized how much she practiced how many victims came before me. There's a different kind of silence when your enemies are planning too quiet, too polite. Linda was baking again. The last time she baked it was the week Dad walked out, and the house smelled like cinnamon denial for days. Monica had started smiling too often, too wide, like someone who'd already won a prize no one else knew about. They weren't snapping at each other anymore. They were unified, rehearsed like co-conspirators wearing masks of civility. And I was supposed to play the fool in the middle of it. I watched from the guest room, listening for shifts in tone. The laughter was measured. The compliments were unnatural. Even Brady, when he stopped by, commented on how peaceful everything seemed. He didn't notice the subtle pauses, the door that closed too quickly when I rolled down the hall, or the way Monica had started double-locking the study drawer she used to ignore. But I noticed The mailbox offered the first real crack. Wedged between a pharmacy coupon and an overdue utility bill was a glossy envelope labeled Private Client, Coldwell Premier Estates. I opened it and read, "Dear Mr. Whitaker, thank you for your interest in listing your home with us. Per your conversation with Agent Tanya Lee on April 10th, we are preparing a custom market analysis for the property at my property. No conversation, no consent, just another lie delivered with a bow." I folded the letter and slid it into my sock drawer, then paused. Monica had been in here. I could feel it. The blanket folded differently, the drawer just slightly ajar. She was watching me too. That night, I ordered a set of micro cameras online. 2-day shipping. While I waited, I rearranged furniture to give myself more angles, more coverage. I tested hiding spots behind the bookshelf inside a fake outlet cover, even tucked into the folds of a decorative curtain Linda insisted I keep for aesthetic balance. When the package arrived, I installed one in the living room. Low corner, angled just above the mantel. It had motion detection and cloud sync. No one would even know it blinked. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, Monica floated by in her usual perfumed haze humming. Linda followed shortly after, holding a thick folder. I wheeled out of the way and parked myself near the kitchen, pretending to scroll my phone. "We'll meet him at 2 on Friday," Linda whispered, lowering her voice. Monica nodded. "We say Dan's agreed verbally, that he's struggling mentally post-accident, and if they ask for proof, we show the power of attorney. It's airtight." Linda looked around, then added, "He may have bought this house, but he owes me for 30 years of food." I held my breath, every syllable recorded. Later that night, I received a text from Greg. "Greg, the expert cracked metadata. That signature isn't yours." I didn't smile. I just exhaled. The first domino was ready. At 3:12 a.m., the camera pinged me. I checked the cloud folder. The video file had synced. Linda's voice clear and cruel. "He may have bought this house, but he owes me for 30 years of food." I stared at the screen. It was my turn now. Some wars aren't fought in daylight. They're fought in cloud folders, IP logs, and quiet downloads. The house was asleep. Monica's television murmured upstairs, some reality show she always claimed was just background noise. Linda's bedroom light had gone out an hour ago. I sat in my wheelchair, the glow of my laptop casting thin shadows across the walls of the guest room. My room now, if you listened to them. The room where I plotted in silence, masked my breath, and clicked carefully. I had the first file. The damning one. The video where Linda declared her imagined debts, where she all but confessed to seeing my house as her birthright. But a single file isn't enough in a world where truth has to be packaged, time-stamped, and validated by someone with a certification. So I sent it. Greg's contact was anonymous, only reachable through an encrypted portal. I uploaded the audio files and the video recording. A few hours later, I received a reply. Metadata confirms voice match. Timestamp aligns with property listing discussions. Deed transfer in progress initiated April 11th. Signature inconsistent with baseline. Likely forged. I exhaled, not with relief but clarity. They weren't just arrogant. They were careless. I called the county title office the next morning, disguising my voice with a raspy cough and pretending to be my own assistant. "Just confirming we received the right deed package," I said. The clerk, cheerful and oblivious, told me the property was in the process of title review. Should be finalized within 2 weeks. Finalized. As in gone. As in, I'd wake up one day and legally be a squatter in my own home. I forwarded the audio to Greg. He replied 2 minutes later. "Greg, you need a time-stamped affidavit now, before they delete everything." "I don't have a lawyer," I wrote back. "Greg, doesn't matter. Write it. Sign it. Date it. Record it. Prove you knew. Prove they knew." So I did. I opened a new doc and began typing. April 23, 2023. 11:17 p.m. I, Daniel Whitaker, attest that Linda Whitaker and Monica Whitaker have initiated a fraudulent transfer of deed ownership while I was incapacitated. At no point did I consent to this action. I wrote for 20 minutes, every detail, every quote, every suspicion that had now become hard evidence. When I finished, I printed a hard copy, signed it, then scanned and re-uploaded it to the same encrypted cloud folder as the original files. But I didn't stop there. Greg had once told me, if you're fighting liars, you have to out-document them. So I began journaling. Not emotional reflections, cold data. Time, date, person. Quote. Every whispered comment, every hallway interaction. April 24, 9:03 a.m. Monica took a call in the living room, mentioned clean title and probate backup. April 24, 1:12 p.m. Linda asked if my painkillers were making me forgetful again. April 25, 6:45 p.m. Noticed scan of legal envelope addressed to Monica on the shared printer. I made a spreadsheet. I backed it up 3 ways. I was building a library, a fortress of records. And then, accidentally, I found it. While scrolling through old voice memos on my phone, I noticed one from the week after surgery. I didn't remember recording it. Likely a glitch, a pocket press. But I played it. A nurse's voice echoed faintly in the background. The clink of metal. Linda's voice came next, sharp and deliberate. He won't even remember signing. He was drooling into his pillow an hour ago. I froze. There it was. Proof that they knew exactly what they were doing. I forwarded it to Greg immediately. And I didn't delete it. I saved it under 3 names, sent a copy to a flash drive I buried under the dresser, and printed the transcript with timestamps. I wasn't just going to take them to court. I was going to make them confess. It wasn't enough to collect their crimes. I needed to infect their confidence with fear. The scent of overpriced candles mixed with champagne and store-bought hors d'oeuvres filled the house I had once called my own. Monica's birthday banners fluttered gently under the ceiling fan, every letter screaming, "Look at me." She'd planned the whole thing like it was a coronation music, a catered tray of finger food, and strategically invited neighbors who barely knew her last name, but knew mine thanks to the deed plaque still hanging outside. I rolled into the living room from the hallway just as her laughter hit a rehearsed crescendo. People turned to look. I hadn't been seen much since the accident, certainly not like this. I wore a navy suit. Not because the party called for one, but because it didn't. Because I knew it would say something louder than words. I'm not who you think I am anymore. Oh, look who's out of bed. Monica chirped, her smile a little too tight. Everyone, this is my brother Dan. He's recovering. Thriving, I said, straightening in my wheelchair, and feeling celebratory. Linda glanced over from the kitchen island, her face unreadable. One hand gripped a wine glass, the other clutched a napkin like it held secrets. I cleared my throat. I'd like to make a toast. The room quieted, a few awkward clinks and half-hearted chuckles filling the space. I raised a glass of water. To families who think they own what they didn't earn, may they enjoy the spotlight while it lasts. The silence was electric. Someone coughed. Monica let out a high, forced laugh. Oh, Dan, you always did love your little jabs. I rolled forward slowly and handed her an envelope. Thick paper. No return address. What's this? She asked, still smiling. Something I thought you might want to review, I said evenly. Consider it a gift. She tucked it under her arm, clearly uncomfortable now. Her smile had faded by degrees. She was already scanning the room for a safe exit. She found it 10 minutes later, whispering something to Linda before disappearing down the hallway. I waited, then slowly moved toward the corner of the house near the air vent where sound traveled just a little too well. I heard her voice sharp and panicked. He knows. How much did Greg tell him? No, listen. I don't know how he found the original. It was buried in that shared folder. Yes, that one. I didn't need to hear more. Her fear was confirmation enough. Back in the living room, the party had shifted. People were quieter. No one asked questions, but no one laughed the same way either. I watched Monica reemerge, her posture slightly off-center, like someone had just knocked her off balance mid-pose. She avoided my gaze. Linda didn't. She was standing near the patio doors, wine-forgotten eyes narrowed not with rage, not yet, but calculation. She looked at me like a chess player realizing a pawn had slipped from her board without warning. And I looked right back. She blinked first. They started checking my room. They even turned off the Wi-Fi. That's when I knew they were scared. The illusion of calm was cracking. Monica stopped humming through the hallways. Linda started leaving cabinets ajar, drawers half closed, as if she was too preoccupied to finish a thought. And every time I returned from a doctor's appointment or a fake one I scheduled just to leave the house, something in my room had been moved. Once, it was the printer cable unplugged. Another time, my pill organizer had been mistakenly placed in the trash. Then came the blackout. The router stopped working one morning. Monica claimed it was a billing issue, though the bill was under my name and auto-paid. I rebooted the modem twice, and on the third attempt it flashed red. Dead. Linda smirked at dinner when I asked about it. "You should be focusing on your recovery, not your little online hobbies," she said, sipping tea, like she hadn't just severed my access to the digital world. But I'd planned for this. I had backups of everything. Not just the voice memos or the forged documents, everything. Labeled folders, metadata logs, even time-stamped screenshots of conversations with Greg and Ms. Howell. One cloud in my real name, one anonymous account, and one physical drive taped behind the vent panel near the baseboard. Greg had given me the referral. She's discreet, sharp, and likes making villains cry. Ms. Howell looked more like a librarian than a courtroom warrior, but within 10 minutes of reviewing the files, she stopped flipping pages and looked at me directly. "This is criminal," she said. "They did this while you were recovering from spinal surgery. They thought I'd forget. Or give up." She shook her head and stood. "We're not giving them that chance. I'm filing for an emergency injunction to freeze the title transfer. The minute we have a judge's signature, they'll be served." Greg texted later that day, "Howell's already on it. They'll be served by Friday. Get ready for screaming." I did. But I also braced for retaliation. Linda began tailing me inside the house, always within earshot, often pretending to look for her glasses or organize the laundry. Once I caught her trying to open my locked filing box. Another time she handed me a plate and whispered, "You used to be so trusting." Monica was subtler. She floated by my door, left notes like, "We're all worried about you," with smiley faces that felt carved from plastic. She asked about the envelope from the party. "What was that, by the way?" she said one afternoon, lingering too long in the hallway. "Just a reminder," I replied. "Of that, I remember everything." She blinked, smiled, and walked away. But I saw the shift in her shoulders, the twitch of panic, the delay in her breath. By Wednesday, I could feel the temperature rising. Nobody talked during breakfast. Linda burned the toast. Monica started slamming drawers. The performance of a happy family had ended. And that night, just after midnight, my door flew open. Monica barged in, eyes wild, clutching her phone. "What exactly are you trying to do, Dan?" she hissed. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I just stared back and said nothing. Because silence, I'd learned, is the sound of control. They hit back faster than I expected, like wounded animals, cornered and furious. It started with a knock. 2 officers stood at the front door, the kind that don't smile when they say good morning. Their uniforms looked too crisp for our faded porch, and Linda was already there, theatrically dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that wasn't even damp. "Mr. Whitaker," the taller officer asked. "That's me. We received a report alleging elder abuse and financial coercion in this household. May we speak with you?" I didn't flinch. I'd been expecting something, but not this. Still, Greg's voice echoed in my head. They won't fight fair. They'll come for your character. I gestured for them to come in, rolling back slowly. Linda stepped aside like she'd just performed a noble duty. Would you like some tea, officers? She asked sweetly. We're good, ma'am, one replied without looking at her. They sat across from me in the living room. Monica had redecorated floral wallpaper, lavender curtains and all. I placed my medical file on the table before they even asked. I've been in rehab for spinal injuries since March, I said calmly. These are the records. I also have my lawyer on call if needed. They reviewed the documents silently. One of them wrote down Ms. Howell's name and the case number I provided, and the financial accusations the shorter officer asked. Everything's been logged. The accounts were joint. The transfers happened while I was on morphine and barely conscious. My lawyer can show you the timestamp metadata. They exchanged a look. I could sense their posture shifting. Not fully backing down, but less certain than when they arrived. We're not making any arrests today, one finally said. But consider this a formal warning. If anything escalates, we'll be back. They stood, thanked me, and left. I watched them walk past Linda, who wiped another invisible tear and whispered, "He's not the son I raised." As the door clicked shut, the room filled with silence so thick I could almost taste it. I wheeled into the kitchen. Monica stood there with a glass of wine she hadn't touched. She looked like she'd rehearsed her grief and forgotten her lines halfway through. Brady was sitting on the staircase, silent as always. But his eyes tracked Monica, not me. Mom's really upset, Monica said quietly, brushing past me. She'll recover, I murmured. That night, Brady knocked on my door. Not with words, just a faint tap. When I opened it, he stood holding something small in his hand. She dropped this in the hallway, he said. Didn't see me pick it up. I don't think she meant to lose it. He handed me a flash drive. No label, no markings. Just black plastic and implication. Thanks, I said, closing the door gently. I plugged it into my laptop and clicked through the folders. One video. No title. I hit play. Monica appeared on screen, seated in her bedroom. The Zoom interface was visible. She was speaking to someone off camera. No, it has to sound real, like I'm scared, like... He pushed her and yelled even though she was crying. Does that work? She paused, nodded at whatever feedback she got, then repeated the line again. Then again. A third take this time with tears. I stared at the screen. It was all there. The setup. The strategy. The theater. I forwarded the file to Ms. Howell with a single line. Let's use this. Then I leaned back in my chair and smiled for the first time in months. The court date was set. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock from my bedroom. That's how still it had become. Monica had stopped clomping down the stairs in her heels. Linda no longer hummed while folding laundry. Their storm had gone underground, and I knew better than to think peace had arrived. No. This was the silence of two people trying to figure out where their plan had gone wrong and who might still believe their version of the truth. Greg picked me up just after 9. We drove in silence except for the occasional tap of his fingers on the steering wheel. She's unraveling, he said finally, eyes on the road. Monica called her old office this morning, wanted to know if fax logs could be deleted remotely. My stomach turned. What did they say? Too late, he said, smirking. It had already frozen everything. We've got the timestamp. That POA was faxed from her desk, not the hospital. I nodded, my jaw clenched. The truth wasn't just leaking, it was hemorrhaging. When we arrived, Ms. Howell was already waiting with a binder so thick it could crush someone's career. Good morning, she said crisply. I hope you didn't eat yet. We've got 20 exhibits to review. Greg gave her a thumbs up and disappeared into another office. She gestured for me to sit. Over the next 2 hours, we built the timeline like a scaffold. Rehab admission March 14th. Alleged signature on POA March 17th. Video of Monica bragging April 4th. Audio clip of Linda April 12. Flash drive. Zoom rehearsal. Fax log. Testimony offer. Who's the witness again? I asked, as she flipped to the last tab. Brianna Holloway, she said. She was a nurse on your floor. Says she remembers Linda waving papers around the nurses' station while you were sedated. She'll testify you weren't in any condition to sign anything. She's willing to go on record. She's already filed an affidavit, Ms. Howell replied. Apparently she's been following local real estate transactions and saw your house listed without your name on it. Said it didn't sit right. I felt a wave of something cold and sharp pass through me. Not fear, recognition. The moment when the world shifts slightly and aligns, if only for a second. We wrapped up by lunch. Ms. Howell said we'd meet again Thursday for final prep, and Greg drove me home. They'll panic more now, he said as we pulled into the driveway. Don't be surprised if they try one last performance. They did. That evening, Linda knocked on my door with a tray of tea and toast like it was 1995, and I'd just come home from college. We need to talk, she said gently. Over dinner. Just us. I studied her face for a moment. There was no warmth, no remorse, only calculation behind tired eyes. Sure, I said. Let's eat. She lit candles at the table. Monica joined, dressed like she was heading to Sunday brunch. The food was bland. Chicken rice, green beans. No flavor, just ceremony. They were trying to create nostalgia, reclaim some imagined harmony that had never really existed. Linda reached for my hand halfway through the meal. I know this has all been confusing, Daniel. We got off track. But maybe we can find our way back. Monica was nodding beside her like a co-conspirator mouthing lines from a worn-out script. Linda leaned closer, arms stretching toward mine. We're still family. Let's not let this get ugly. I waited. Then I leaned forward and whispered, slow and quiet, You'll get to pretend to love me in court, too. She flinched. Monica dropped her fork. I didn't look back. They thought court would save them. They thought I'd flinch. They didn't know I'd been preparing for this since the moment I woke up bleeding. The courthouse smelled like old paper and disinfectant. Every creak of a bench or cough in the hallway sounded louder than it should have. I arrived an hour early. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted them to see me sitting there already calm, clean-cut, composed. No wheelchair, no hospital gown, no weakness. Monica walked in wearing a beige blazer and too much perfume. Linda followed in black like a grieving widow grieving perhaps the exposure she knew was coming. Neither made eye contact, neither dared to. Greg gave me a small nod from across the hall. Ms. Howell sat beside me, flipping through her binder one last time. Let them speak first, she murmured. Let the arrogance show. The judge entered promptly at 9, a tall man with a stern jaw and a voice like gravel. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Case number 2023-4111, Whitaker v. Whitaker, and Lewis the clerk called out. We stood. The air seemed to hold its breath. Monica's attorney began with a soft-spoken, almost apologetic tone. Your Honor, this is a delicate family matter. My client acted under the assumption that her brother Daniel was mentally and physically incapable of handling his affairs. She stepped in with love. Ms. Howell didn't let him finish. Your Honor, we'll be presenting documentation to challenge that assumption directly, including medical records, timestamps, and recorded evidence. The judge raised a brow. Proceed. We took our seats. Ms. Howell slid the first document across the bench to the bailiff who handed it to the judge. This is a notarized record from St. Mary's Rehab Facility, she explained. Signed by nurse Brianna Holloway. It states that on the date of the alleged power of attorney signing, Mr. Whitaker was conscious, verbal, and capable of basic communication, but under pain medication and unaware of legal documents being presented. The judge scanned the page, then looked up. Was he under any psychiatric evaluation at the time? No, Your Honor, Ms. Howell replied. We have confirmation from the attending physician that Mr. Whitaker was not diagnosed with any cognitive impairment. Silence. I watched Monica's fingers twitch on the table, tapping a silent rhythm of panic. Linda whispered something into her attorney's ear. He pretended not to hear her. I kept my face still. No smirk, no flinch, just breathing. Ms. Howell continued. We will also be submitting metadata analyses from files transmitted during Mr. Whitaker's hospital stay, which suggest forgery of electronic signatures and document origin inconsistencies. The judge nodded. I'll review those. In the meantime, I'm granting the motion to unseal surveillance footage from the hospital hallway and room on March 17th. Monica's shoulders stiffened. I felt it, like a pulse of electricity through the courtroom. Next hearing is set for July 1st, the judge said. Both parties are advised to refrain from media contact. But media had already begun circling. The phrase estate dispute combined with durable power of attorney had made it onto a local legal blog, which somehow grew into a headline on a regional news site by lunchtime. We exited through the side corridor, but a few reporters still found us. Cameras, microphones, bright eyes hungry for a twist. Mr. Whitaker, one asked, "Are you seeking revenge or justice?" I paused. I wanted to say both. I wanted to scream that it wasn't a clean line, that betrayal rewired your sense of morality, that justice without consequence felt hollow. But instead, I said, what was true depends on what they call what they did to me. That was the quote they printed in bold. As we stepped outside into the sharp summer air, I saw Monica's lawyer lean in close to her. His mouth barely moved. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw her reaction. Her face drained of color. We passed close enough for me to read his lips. We need to settle, this won't end well. The footage played, and with each second my silence became a weapon sharper than any lawyer's tongue. It began with a slight hum from the court's AV system, followed by the grainy video on the projection screen. There I was, slumped in a hospital bed, pale eyes glassy. Monica stood beside me, her hand on mine, gently guiding a pen across the page. A nurse passed in the background, unaware of the crime unfolding 10 feet away. Monica's voice came through the courtroom speakers next. "Just sign here, Dan. It's for your insurance. You don't want the paperwork to pile up, right?" Then the audio recording picked up clearer than I remembered. Linda's voice, brittle and sharp. "He's so drugged he'll sign anything." There was no mistaking it. Her voice. The smugness. The intention. A few people in the courtroom gasped. The judge lifted one brow, then looked over the rim of his glasses toward Monica's counsel. Ms. Howell didn't say a word. She just folded her hands and leaned back in her seat, letting the silence hammer them into the floor. Monica stared straight ahead, lips parted, blinking faster with each passing second. Linda reached for a tissue she didn't use. Her hand trembled. The judge cleared his throat. "Is there any contest to the authenticity of this footage?" Monica's attorney stood. "Your Honor, we request a brief recess to review." "Denied," the judge snapped. "You had time to review discovery. Sit down." An IT technician from the court's tech office stepped forward. "Your Honor, I can confirm the footage and audio files were authenticated by our forensic team and match both hospital and device timestamps." "Thank you," the judge replied curtly. Greg entered the back of the courtroom just then, slipping into a seat quietly. He caught my eye and gave a slow nod. I didn't return it. I didn't need to. I wasn't playing to the gallery anymore. The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. Given the material submitted and the apparent coercion shown on video and audio, the court will reconvene to address not just the matter of civil fraud, but potential criminal charges as well. The gavel struck wood like a thunderclap. Monica jumped. Linda flinched. The room emptied slower than before. Reporters scribbled furiously. No one spoke to Monica or Linda. I didn't need to look at them. The silence around them had changed. It wasn't protective anymore. It was radioactive. As the court recessed, I rolled forward, ignoring the tension in my neck, the fatigue under my ribs. I had waited long enough for them to sweat. Just as they reached the exit, I saw Linda's fingers clamp tightly around Monica's wrist. You told me this was foolproof. When the tide turns, it doesn't just wash away lies, it pulls reputation's allies and comfort out to sea. By the time the courthouse doors opened again for our next session, Monica's name was already trending for all the wrong reasons. The footage from court had leaked just a short clip, but enough to light a fire online. Woman tricks disabled brother out of home, the caption read. Thousands shared it. Her firm couldn't ignore it. By noon, she was scrubbed from the company website. By 2, her keycard was disabled. And by 5, a cold official email. Your services are no longer required. Linda didn't fare much better. Her Facebook account, once a gallery of passive-aggressive quotes about loyalty and ungrateful children, went silent. Her siblings, 3 of whom had backed her emotionally, and in one case financially, had begun to distance themselves. Aunt Karen sent me a message first, then a phone call. I know I'm late, she said, voice raspy from age or regret, I couldn't tell which. But your mother, she did something similar to me, not as cruel. But it was enough for me to walk away and never look back. I didn't say much, just listened. Aunt Karen told me Linda had once taken over her apartment lease during a medical leave, then refused to move out, claiming the landlord gave it to her. The family had hushed it up, blaming stress. Karen moved across the country. I'm sorry we all let her shape you into silence, she added. You deserved better. I hung up with a thank you, more numb than angry. These weren't apologies I'd begged for. They were just proof that truth had gravity. It pulled the past back up like a drowned body. Brady, meanwhile, had done the one thing that changed everything. He posted a photo of me at my college graduation, him clapping like a little kid in the front row. His caption read, "This is my brother. He paid for everything. They lied to him. I'm not staying quiet anymore." The image spread. People who once whispered assumptions about me began questioning their own silence. I wasn't just fighting back. I was reclaiming the story they stole. The house for once became still. The tension that used to choke the air was replaced with the sound of phone calls. Linda no longer answered letters Monica pretended not to read. Then came the legal hammer. The title company confirmed a temporary freeze on the property pending court ruling. Monica had tried to list it quietly, but the real estate agent she contacted had grown suspicious after seeing the headlines. She reported it. Linda received her blow next. A certified envelope hand-delivered contained the notice her driver's license was under review, flagged due to possible fraud in the handling of my affairs. Her power of attorney status, the same one she'd clutched like a sword, was officially suspended. She stood outside the kitchen, gripping the envelope like it had burned her hand. Her lips didn't move. Her eyes didn't meet mine. Later that night, as I sat in my room journaling everything for court, my phone buzzed. Caller ID, Mom. I stared at the screen for a long time. She hadn't called me directly since before the fall. Not once. Not when I was in the hospital. Not during rehab. Not even when she needed something. I let it ring until the final second. Then I picked up. There was no greeting, no sigh, no sharp tone. Just a voice I barely recognized, smaller, somehow drained. Can we talk? Forgiveness isn't weakness, but pretending nothing happened. That's not strength. It's surrender. Greg sat across from me at a small coffee shop tucked behind the courthouse. He was scrolling through a legal news blog that had published another piece about Monica's disbarment and Linda's looming investigation. You sure you don't want to press for jail time? He asked, eyes sharp behind the steam of his black coffee. We've got enough. Fraud, coercion, theft. Slam dunk if Howell pushes hard. I stirred my drink. I hadn't touched it. And then what I asked. They rot, I rebuild, and I still wake up every morning replaying it. Greg leaned back, studying me. You're too noble for this. No, I said quietly. I'm just tired. He didn't argue. He knew. Greg had been burned before. Betrayal was his native language too. But revenge. Revenge didn't always come with peace. Sometimes it came with more weight. And I was done dragging anchors behind me. Later that day, I found myself at the cemetery. The grass was dry, windless. I stood by the flat stone where my father lay, his name etched into granite that hadn't been visited by my family in years. My wheelchair sat still in the dirt path as I leaned forward with effort. You always said, protect what's yours without becoming what you hate. I tried, I said aloud. God knows I tried. I remembered his voice, hoarse from lung disease, cracking jokes through oxygen masks. He died before Linda turned the house into a battleground. But even back then, he'd seen the shadows forming. I don't think I'm trying to win anymore. I admitted to the grave, just trying to breathe without resentment. I stayed a while longer, not talking, just being. When I got home, Linda had left a note on the front step. Not another insult. Not legal nonsense. Just a simple line. Will you talk to me? I didn't respond. Not with a call. Not in person. Instead, I typed a letter. 3 pages. It wasn't angry, but it wasn't soft. I wrote about every moment she made me feel like a burden. Every silence that screamed louder than her words. Every time she used my kindness as a weakness and my trust as leverage. I'm not here to correct your version of events, I wrote at the end, but I am here to make sure mine is finally heard. I sealed it and mailed it the next morning. No return address. Then I began reclaiming the house, not just legally, but emotionally. I stripped the floral wallpaper Monica had plastered over my walls. I tore down lavender curtains that never belonged. I repainted the guest room, the one Linda banished me to, turning it into a small reading room with shelves lined with the books I once loved, but hadn't touched in years. Every paint stroke, every hammer hit was a step toward reclaiming something they thought they'd erased me. Weeks passed. The case continued its slow march toward conclusion. Greg kept me updated, but I spent less time fixating on the details. I'd done the work. Now it was in the system's hands. One afternoon, a letter arrived from Linda. I waited 2 days before opening it. There was no apology inside, no acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just a strange twisting of memory, a recounting of events where I was confused, angry, and ungrateful. Her words slithered between justification and denial, always dancing around the truth without ever facing it. I didn't finish the last page. I walked out to the backyard, held the letter over the grill, and struck a match. It curled in orange and black until there was nothing left. I didn't need her apology. I just needed her silence. I built the house. They tried to turn it into a throne. Now it's just home again. The courtroom smelled faintly of dust and stale coffee. The judge's voice rang out clear but not loud. The kind of tone that knew the weight of finality didn't need volume to make itself heard. In favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Daniel Whitman. Full property rights are restored, and restitution in the amount of $94,300 is to be paid by the defendant, Monica Whitman. Additional claims for medical coercion are now under review by a separate body. There was no cheer, no applause, just the sound of the gavel and the rustle of papers being gathered. Monica's chair sat empty, a ghost of her confidence. Her lawyer didn't offer excuses for her absence, he just looked tired. Linda was there, sitting 3 rows behind the defense table. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, just stared ahead, hands clenched in her lap. When the judge stood to adjourn, she stood too, smoothing down the sleeves of a blazer I hadn't seen before. She turned toward the exit but never looked my way. Ms. Howell remained seated beside me for a few moments, calmly closing her briefcase. You did it, I said, my voice catching somewhere between disbelief and exhaustion. She shook her head gently. No, Dan. You didn't win. You revealed. That's more powerful. She squeezed my arm once professionally, then gathered her files and walked out with a grace I envied. I waited until the room was empty before I rolled forward and exited through the front of the courthouse sunlight sharp after the long shadow of proceedings. When I returned home, the air smelled of paint and lemon cleaner. I had finished the last coat of the porch railing the night before, sanding out the last splinters of what they left behind. The screen door creaked a little, but it was mine again, every bolt, every nail, every decision. I made a cup of coffee and stepped onto the front porch, settling into the wide wooden chair I'd repaired with my own hands. The sun hung low, casting that golden, forgiving light that always arrived before dusk. For the first time in months, the silence around me didn't feel like a trap. It felt like peace. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for their next move. I was just here. A small voice cut through the quiet. Across the sidewalk, a young boy, maybe 7 or 8, stood holding a soccer ball, eyeing the house with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "Mr. Dan, he called you fixed it all by yourself?" I smiled. "No," I said. "I just stopped letting others break it." He grinned and waved before disappearing behind the fence line. I leaned back, letting the porch creak beneath my wide eyes, scanning the street that had watched all this unfold. Maybe the neighbors had read the headlines. Maybe they'd only seen the ambulance that night, the police, later the moving truck Monica never sent. Didn't matter. The gate no longer squeaked. The flowers Monica had replaced with white rocks were growing again. And inside my bedroom was mine, no longer a guest room in my own home. I finished my coffee just as the sun hit the treetops. The shadows stretched long and quiet like old friends finally ready to rest. Then I noticed the mailbox. Inside, tucked beneath an envelope from the electric company, was a letter. Handwritten. No return address. I didn't open it. Not yet. Some battles end not with a roar, but with silence, the kind that finally feels earned. They tried to bury me under forged signatures and fake smiles, but every lie they stacked became a ladder I climbed. Justice doesn't always come swiftly, but when it does, it rewrites everything they thought was permanent. Like the final crack in a dam of deceit, the truth broke through, and nothing they built on betrayal could survive it. If this story struck something in you, don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you felt seen, or 2 if you're still waiting for your own justice.